All right, so welcome to our deep dive today. And we're going to be tackling the hidden motives behind everyday human behavior.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, and our guide for this journey is going to be The Elephant in the Brain, a book by Kevin Simler and Robin Hanson. And honestly, this book is a total mind bender. You know,
Actually,
like
yeah.
it makes you question everything.
Absolutely.
Have you ever stopped to think, really think about why you do the things you do?
Yeah.
I mean, what's really driving our actions?
Right.
This book kind of throws a wrench in the whole, rational human being idea
It does.
by saying that a lot of our actions are actually driven by self-interest, even if we're totally clueless about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
It suggests that we're not always the rational, selfless actors we like to think we are.
right.
But instead, our brains are kind of wired to act in ways that benefit us socially, even if that means, being a little deceptive.
Deceptive even to ourselves.
Yeah, that's the crazy part.
What?
This book introduces this really compelling analogy of the mind as a press secretary.
Okay.
And it's basically like this module that strategically spins the truth to present us in the best possible light.
Oh, that's interesting.
This press secretary is constantly working behind the scenes, filtering information, shaping our narratives, all to make us look good to others and even to ourselves.
So if our brains are so good at hiding our true motives, how can we ever uncover them?
Right.
Where do we even begin to understand what's really going on in there?
Well, one way is to look at our evolutionary history.
Okay.
Think about it. Our ancestors lived in these small, tightly knit groups where social status was everything.
Right.
To survive and thrive, they had to constantly navigate these, complex social dynamics, build alliances, and outmaneuver rivals.
So our brains evolved to play this constant game of social chess, always strategizing and calculating our next move.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like we're all playing this game whether we realize it or not.
Okay, so then how do we know what moves to make?
Well, the authors use the example of primates grooming each other.
Okay.
On the surface, it seems like a simple act of hygiene, right?
Yeah, keep clean.
But there's actually a lot more going on beneath the surface.
Yep.
Grooming is a way for primates to build and strengthen social bonds, establish dominance hierarchies, and even exchange favors.
So it's not just about keeping clean. It's about sending subtle social signals and solidifying your place in the group.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, that makes you wonder how many of our human actions, things we do every day, are actually loaded with these hidden meanings.
Right.
It's kind of freaky when you think about it.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate this whole hidden social world?
Well, norms play a big role in that.
Norms, those unwritten rules that everyone seems to just know.
Exactly.
But we all break those rules sometimes, right?
Of course we all do, but it's how we handle those situations that's really interesting.
So how does that tie into this whole self-deception thing?
Well, think about it. We often break those subtle social norms without even realizing it.
Mm-hmm.
And even when we do catch ourselves, we tend to come up with excuses,
Yeah.
rationalize our actions, and generally try to sweep our norm violations under the rug.
Okay, I've definitely done that.
We all have.
It's like that press secretary is working overtime to protect our image.
Exactly. That press secretary is always there spinning the narrative to make us look good.
It's a bit much to think about, honestly.
It is, but it's fascinating too, right?
Yeah, totally. It's like this whole secret world of social cues and hidden agendas is operating right under our noses.
And the thing is, there's actually scientific evidence to back this up.
Really?
Yeah, the authors of The Elephant in the Brain talk about these fascinating studies on split brain patients.
Split brain patients. What's that?
So these are individuals whose brains have been surgically separated, right?
Oh, yeah.
And in these experiments, one side of the brain would take some action, and the other side would immediately fabricate a plausible explanation, even though it had no idea why that action was taken.
So one part of the brain was literally making up stories to explain what the other part was doing.
Exactly. It's like that press secretary in action, right?
It's wild.
And the interesting thing is that this tendency to rationalize our actions, even when we don't really know why we did something, it's a universal human experience.
For sure. We're always trying to make sense of our behavior, even when it doesn't make sense.
Right. We're constantly coming up with stories, trying to fit the pieces together, even if those stories aren't entirely accurate.
So if we're so good at fooling ourselves, how can we ever develop genuine self-awareness?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
But one way to get a glimpse into those hidden motives is to pay attention to our body language.
Oh,
You see, unlike our words, which can be easily manipulated, our body language is often much more honest and revealing.
so you're saying that even if I'm trying to play it cool, my body might betray me.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
You might be trying to maintain a certain demeanor, but those subtle cues and signals, they leak out through your posture, your gestures, your facial expressions.
Like if I'm trying to pretend I'm not interested in someone, but I can't stop blushing.
Precisely.
This is making me super self-conscious about my own body language right now.
Don't worry, we all do it.
Okay, good.
The book dives into several examples of how our body language can betray our hidden motives, especially when it comes to things like attraction.
Oh, okay.
The way we dress, the way we touch our hair, even the way we stand or sit, it can all send subtle signals that we're not even aware of.
It's amazing how much of our communication is happening on the subconscious level.
Absolutely.
So you're saying there's more to flirting than just cheesy pickup lines.
Oh, much more. It's this intricate dance of cues and signals, a way of testing the waters without being too obvious about it.
It's like a whole secret language.
Exactly.
You know, this whole concept of hidden motives, it's really starting to make me think differently about my own behavior and the behavior of others. It's like we're all walking around with these secret agendas that we don't even know about.
And that's what makes this book so fascinating.
It really does challenge our assumptions about human nature and makes you question everything.
It's like holding up a mirror to ourselves and seeing something totally unexpected.
I'm definitely hooked. Can't wait to see what other insights this book has in store for us.
Me too. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, well, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and dive even deeper into the world of hidden motives. All right, so we're back and ready to explore even more hidden motives, those sneaky little things that shape our everyday lives.
You know, in the first part, we talked about how evolution has basically wired us to be like master social strategists, always sending out subtle signals and navigating these like crazy complex social dynamics.
Right, like we're all playing this intricate game without even realizing it.
Exactly. And we also touched on the idea that even seemingly innocent actions like, laughing or grooming can actually be loaded with hidden meanings.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It really is.
So now I'm kind of curious about how all of this plays out in like more concrete areas of our lives. Like let's say our shopping habits,
Oh, that's a good one.
right? Like why do we buy the things we buy?
Well, the elephant in the brain suggests that our desire to signal status and values, it influences everything, from the clothes we wear to the cars we drive, even down to the coffee we drink.
Okay, wait, so you're telling me that my choice to buy that like super expensive organic fair trade coffee, that's not just about my love of ethically sourced caffeine.
Well, it might be part of it.
There might be some other motive lurking beneath the surface.
It's definitely possible.
Okay.
The book talks about how our consumption choices, they often function as signals.
Signals.
Yeah, like we're broadcasting our wealth, our values, even our group affiliations to the world.
Huh. That's interesting.
Think about it. Have you ever noticed how your purchasing habits kind of change depending on who you're with or like the image you're trying to project?
Now that you mention it, I totally have.
Yeah.
Like I'm way more likely to order that, fancy cocktail at a work event, but when I'm just out with my close friends, I'll stick to a beer.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of how social context shapes our consumption choices.
So it's not just about fitting in, it's also about standing out.
Yeah, and the book highlights this concept called conspicuous consumption, which is basically the idea that we buy certain goods and services not for their, actual value, but for the signal they send about our social status.
Okay, so conspicuous consumption, is that just a fancy way of saying keeping up with the Joneses?
Well, it can definitely manifest that way, but it's a bit more nuanced than that.
Right.
It's not just about mimicking our neighbors. It's about strategically choosing products and experiences that enhance our perceived status within our own, chosen social circles.
So it's like we're all curating these carefully crafted personas through our consumption choices.
Yeah.
Signaling to the world who we are, or at least who we want them to think we are.
Precisely. And this desire to signal our values, it can be just as potent as that desire to signal our status.
Okay.
The book talks about this phenomenon of virtue signaling, where we buy certain products or engage in certain behaviors specifically to show off, like our moral righteousness or social consciousness.
Oh, so like buying a hybrid car, even if you don't really drive that much, or donating to a high-profile charity, even if you haven't really looked into where that money's going.
Those are great examples. And what's interesting about virtue signaling is that it often goes beyond like simple altruism, right? There's an element of social calculation involved, this desire to be seen as a good person, both by others and by ourselves.
Right, it's like that press secretary is hard at work again.
Exactly, crafting the narrative of our own goodness.
Wow, it's kind of crazy to think about how much of our behavior is driven by this need to signal.
It is, isn't it?
It makes you wonder, like, would we even buy half the stuff we do if we were completely oblivious to each other's possessions?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right. Like, what if we all lived in this world where we had no idea what anyone else owned or consumed?
The book actually touches on that idea.
It does.
Yeah, suggesting that in a world where we're completely obliviated to each other's possessions, our consumption choices might become a lot more practical and standardized.
Okay, so we'd be less concerned with impressing others and more focused on meeting our own basic needs and preferences.
Exactly.
But would we really, though?
Yeah.
I mean, humans are inherently social creatures.
Right.
Even if we weren't competing over material possessions. Wouldn't we just find other ways to signal our status and values?
You bring up a great point, and the book acknowledges that as well.
It does.
Yeah, we might shift our focus to, like, achievements, skills, or knowledge that are harder to fake.
Oh, so it's like we'd be competing in a different arena, but the underlying drive to stand out and signal our worth, that would still be there.
Exactly. It's like human nature to want to be seen and recognized for our accomplishments.
Okay, but let's get real for a second. A lot of these signaling behaviors, they're driven by advertising, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, advertisers are masters at tapping into our insecurities and desires, convincing us that we need their product to be happy, successful, loved, all that jazz.
You're absolutely right. And the book dedicates an entire chapter to advertising, arguing that it's incredibly effective at exploiting our hidden motives, particularly our desire to, fit in, be attractive, and project this image of success.
But we all like to think we're immune to advertising manipulation, right?
Oh, of course.
Like, I can see right through those cheesy slogans and those staged commercials.
I know, me too.
But then I catch myself admiring those same products in a store window, and I'm like, wait a minute, am I really as immune as I think I am?
That's the thing about advertising, though, right? It often works on the subconscious level, influencing our emotions and desires without us even realizing it.
Yeah, it's sneaky like that.
It really is. And the book talks about this thing called the third person effect, which is this belief that others are more susceptible to advertising than we are.
Oh, yeah, I totally do that.
Yeah.
Like, I'll see those ads for luxury cars or designer handbags, and I'll think, who falls for this stuff?
Right.
But then, there I am, eyeing up that same handbag in the store.
Exactly. We often underestimate the power of advertising to, shape our desires and influence our purchasing decisions. And advertisers are getting more sophisticated in their techniques, using social media influencers, targeted online ads, all to personalize their messages and really appeal to our, individual needs and insecurities.
It's kind of scary to think about how much of our consumption is driven by factors that we're not even aware of.
It is. Like, we think we're making these rational choices, but our subconscious minds are being pulled in all sorts of directions by these, like, subtle cues and signals.
Yeah, we're not as in control as we think we are.
Not always, no. And it's not just about buying products either. The book also talks about how advertising can influence our behavior in other areas, like our health choices.
Oh.
Think about those public service announcements that try to, scare us into quitting smoking or eating healthier, right?
Yeah.
They're often playing on our fear of social judgment, suggesting that we'll be, ostracized or ridiculed if we don't conform to certain health norms.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I've definitely felt pressured to make certain health choices, like cutting back on sugar or exercising more, not necessarily because I'm convinced it's the best thing for my health, but because I don't want to be judged by others.
Exactly. And that pressure can be incredibly powerful, even when it's subtle or unspoken. We're social creatures wired to care about what others think of us, and advertisers, they're masters at exploiting that vulnerability.
So what's the solution? Should we all just become hermits and avoid any form of advertising or social influence?
Well, that's probably not realistic or necessary, really. The key takeaway here is simply to be aware of these hidden influences and to, develop a healthy dose of skepticism.
Okay.
Question your motivations, consider alternative perspectives, and don't be afraid to, challenge the status quo.
I like that. Challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we've tackled the dark side of consumption and advertising, let's move on to something a little more uplifting.
Okay.
Let's talk about art.
Art.
Surely art is all about beauty and self-expression, not social signaling.
Art, a seemingly pure and noble pursuit, but the elephant in the brain, it challenges that assumption as well.
Really?
Yeah, suggesting that even our appreciation for art is shaped by those same hidden motives, particularly the desire to signal fitness and attract mates.
Hold on. Are you saying that my love of Impressionist paintings is just a subconscious attempt to impress potential partners? That's kind of a bummer.
Well, not necessarily.
Right.
The book doesn't argue that our appreciation for beauty or emotional expression is entirely driven by these ulterior motives.
Oh.
But it does suggest that our aesthetic preferences, they're often shaped by factors we're not even aware of, including our desire to, align ourselves with certain social groups or signal our intelligence and sophistication.
Okay, I'm willing to entertain this idea.
Yeah.
So if art is this form of fitness display, how does that change how we value different art forms?
Well, the book argues that we're often drawn to art that's, difficult or costly to create,
Okay.
as this signals the artist's skill, dedication, even their access to resources, right?
Yeah.
Think about those elaborate Renaissance paintings that took years to complete, or those intricate sculptures made from, rare and expensive materials.
So it's not just about appreciating the beauty of the artwork itself. It's also about recognizing the effort and resources that went into making it.
Exactly. And the book suggests that we're subconsciously evaluating the artist's fitness based on these signals.
So basically, we're impressed by artists who can flex their creative muscles.
Yeah, in a way, it's like if the artist was able to pull this off, they must be pretty amazing.
This is making me rethink my entire art collection.
Really?
Instead of just admiring the brushstrokes and colors, I'm now wondering what kind of signal the artist was trying to send,
Right.
and how my own appreciation of their work might be influenced by my desire to, signal certain things about myself.
And it's not just visual art either. The book argues that this same dynamic, it plays out in music, literature, even fashion.
Oh, wow.
Think about those virtuoso musicians who can play these incredibly fast or complex pieces, right? Their skill, it signals not only talent, but also discipline, perseverance, maybe even a bit of, obsessive passion. And those are all qualities that might be attractive in a mate or collaborator.
So you're saying my love of Bach's Fugues isn't just about my refined musical taste. It's also a subconscious attempt to signal my intelligence and good genes.
Well, maybe not entirely, but it's fascinating to consider how our aesthetic preferences are often shaped by factors we're not even aware of. And this awareness can help us appreciate art on a deeper level, recognizing the complex interplay between, beauty, social signaling, and our own hidden motives.
It's like all those art history classes I took suddenly make sense.
Yeah.
All that talk about technique and symbolism, it was really just a code for decoding the artist's social signals.
Exactly. And it's not just about the artist's intentions either. The book argues that we as consumers of art, we're also drawn to works that signal fitness and align with our own social aspirations.
Okay.
So our choices of what art to buy, display, or talk about can also be seen as a form of signaling.
This is making me seriously question my own motivations,
Yeah.
and the hidden meanings behind so much of what I do.
Right.
I never realized how much of my life is a performance, this carefully crafted presentation of myself to the world.
It can be a bit exhausting to think about.
It really can.
But it can also be liberating. Once we recognize those hidden agendas, we can start to make more conscious choices about how we present ourselves and what signals we want to send.
That's a good point. It's like taking control of the narrative.
Exactly.
Well, this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
And we're not done yet. In the next part, we'll explore how these hidden motives play out in even more, profound areas of life like charity, education, healthcare, and even religion.
Ooh, that's going to be good.
Buckle up, folks. It's about to get deep. All right, welcome back to our final deep dive into the elephant in the brain.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It really has. We've uncovered so much about these hidden motives that are secretly driving our behavior.
From our conversations to our shopping habits, even our taste in art.
Yeah, it's almost like we've been peeling back the layers of human nature, revealing this whole intricate web of social signaling and subconscious strategies.
And in this final part, we're going to tackle some of those really big, maybe even controversial areas where these motives might be at play.
Okay, hit me with it. I'm ready.
All right, let's start with education healthcare and religion.
Oh, wow. Okay, we're going deep.
Yeah, going deep.
So let's start with education.
Right.
We often think of education as, this noble pursuit of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But the elephant in the brain, it presents a pretty provocative alternative view.
It does.
Like, what's their take on education exactly?
Well, the authors argue that education, despite its emphasis on, learning and personal growth, often functions as a signaling mechanism.
A signaling mechanism. So you mean like a way for students to, signal their intelligence and work ethic to potential employers?
Exactly. They suggest that a lot of what we do in education, like attending prestigious schools, earning those fancy degrees, it's about signaling our fitness to the world,
Okay.
showcasing our ability to conform to those social expectations and ultimately enhancing our social and economic prospects.
So it's not just about the knowledge itself, but that credential, that piece of paper,
That sheepskin effect, yeah.
right? The diploma on the wall, that can be more valuable than the actual knowledge you've retained.
In some cases, yeah. It's a signal to employers that you're intelligent, disciplined, capable of, jumping through those hoops.
It makes you wonder if the way we structure education might actually be reinforcing these signaling behaviors.
It's a valid point.
Right. Like, what if we focus less on standardized tests and rote memorization and more on cultivating critical thinking, creativity, and those practical skills? Would that change the signaling game?
It's a great question, and one that, educators and policymakers are grappling with for sure.
Yeah.
The book suggests that as long as education is tied to, economic and social advancement, there's always going to be an element of signaling involved.
Right. It's like a built-in part of the system.
Exactly. But we can definitely strive to create a system that values genuine learning and personal growth alongside those signaling functions.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about healthcare.
Okay.
This is an area where I'm super curious to see how this whole hidden motives thing plays out.
Right. Well, The Elephant in the Brain introduces this fascinating concept they call conspicuous care.
Conspicuous care, okay?
And it suggests that our healthcare decisions, they aren't always solely driven by that desire to, maximize our health outcomes.
Wait, so you're saying there might be other factors influencing our choices about medical treatments?
Oh, absolutely. The book argues that we often use medical treatments to signal our care for loved ones
Okay.
and our willingness to, invest in their well-being, even if those treatments are, expensive or have limited benefits.
So it's like we're trying to prove how much we care, even if it means going a bit overboard with those medical interventions.
Yeah, exactly. Think about it. Have you ever felt pressured to choose a more expensive or high-tech medical treatment, even if a simpler or less invasive option might be just as effective?
Now that you mention it, yeah, I can definitely think of situations where I might have felt that pressure, especially when it comes to, the health of loved ones.
Right.
You want to do everything you can to help,
Mm-hmm.
even if it means going against your better judgment.
And that desire to signal our care can be incredibly powerful, especially in, emotionally charged situations like end-of-life care.
Right.
The book cites the high medical spending on terminally ill patients, often with very little therapeutic benefit.
Wow.
It's a way for families to demonstrate their love and devotion even when facing, inevitable loss.
It's heartbreaking, but I can see how those signaling motives might come into play.
Yeah.
We want to believe that we're doing everything possible, even if it means, prolonging suffering or spending tons of money on treatments that ultimately won't change the outcome.
It's a really complex ethical dilemma, and there are no easy answers. But by acknowledging those hidden motives, we can at least start to have more honest conversations about healthcare goals and values, both for ourselves and for our loved ones.
Okay, now let's talk about the elephant in the room, so to speak.
Okay, which one? There are a few.
Right. Well, the big one, religion.
Okay.
This is an area where, I got to admit, I'm a little skeptical about this whole hidden motives thing.
I get it.
Surely faith is about something deeper than just social signaling, right?
That's a common sentiment for sure, but The Elephant in the Brain makes a compelling case that religion, despite its, spiritual and transcendental aspects, also serves a very profound social function.
Okay.
It helps to foster cooperation, signal group loyalty, and even, enhance our reputation within our communities.
So going to church or temple every week, It's not just about connecting with a higher power. It's also about showing our community that we're good, trustworthy people who follow the rules.
Exactly. Think about those costly rituals, beliefs in supernatural punishment, and adhering to all those religious norms. All those things can be seen as signals of commitment and trustworthiness to fellow believers.
Yeah, and those signals, they can be pretty powerful, especially in societies where religion plays such a central role.
Absolutely. By publicly demonstrating our adherence to those beliefs and practices, we're basically signaling our allegiance to the group and boosting our reputation within that group.
It's like saying, hey, I'm one of you. You can trust me.
Exactly.
It makes me think about all those religious traditions that involve fasting, pilgrimages, or other forms of self-denial. It's like, look how devout I am. I'm willing to suffer to prove my faith.
Yeah, and it's not just about those outward displays of piety either.
Okay.
The book argues that even our beliefs themselves can function as signals of group affiliation.
So believing in a specific set of doctrines or interpreting scripture in a particular way, that's a way of signaling that you belong to a specific group. It's like wearing a badge of membership.
Precisely. And this helps to explain why religious beliefs can be so, emotionally charged and resistant to change.
Right. It's not just about logic or evidence. It's about our identity and sense of belonging.
Yeah, challenging those beliefs can feel like a personal attack.
Wow, this conversation is making me seriously question my own approach to religion. Like, am I truly open to different perspectives? Or am I just clinging to the beliefs that make me feel comfortable and accepted within my own social circle? Tough question.
It is a tough question, but an important one for sure.
And that's the beauty of this book, right?
Yeah.
It challenges us to really examine our beliefs and motivations, even those most, sacred areas of our lives.
It's about holding up a mirror to ourselves and being honest about what we see.
Well, this deep dive has been a real mind bender.
It has been pretty intense.
We've explored those hidden motives behind so much of what we do, from our everyday interactions to our most profound beliefs. And honestly, it's been a little unsettling at times.
I get it.
But I have to say, I'm feeling kind of empowered by this newfound awareness.
I think that's the key takeaway, the elephant in the brain. It's not about judging ourselves or others for having those hidden motives. It's about recognizing that we're all complex creatures.
Right. We have a mix of motivations, some noble, some not so much.
Exactly. And by acknowledging those hidden agendas, we can start to make more conscious choices about how we live our lives, how we interact with others, what kind of world we want to create.
So the next time you find yourself doing something that seems selfless, take a moment to really reflect. Like, what are your true motivations? Are you acting out of genuine altruism, or are you subconsciously trying to signal something to yourself or the world?
Those are powerful questions.
They are, and it's a journey of self-discovery that the elephant in the brain invites us all to take.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to pick up a copy of the book, keep exploring the human mind, and remember, the truth may be hidden, but it's out there.
Just keep an eye out for those elephants in the brain.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an absolute pleasure exploring the elephant in the brain with you.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those brain gears turning.